Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire. And since we're doing this virtually, we don't have to keep our 6 foot distance. We can be right next to each other and give each other hugs and even kisses. It's all good because we're gathering around the campfire together, and we can be as close as we want here. And we can share our stories of connection to essence, to that which is bigger than us, to the big mystery, to the divine plan, which I'm sure many of us are really curious about at this point. What is the divine plan of all of this? And hopefully it's leading to that or something even better. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and I love to guide people on their journey of discovery of their personal journey to the sacred within them, and to unfold that journey. And we do it in community because it's so hard to do this alone, people. So we do it in community, and my program is called Butterfly Circle. So if that's something you're interested, there's details on my website, carriehummingbird.com. And of course, you can always just hit me up for a private talk. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. So today's guest I met because I was interviewed on her awesome podcast, Soulfilled Sisterhood. And she and I just clicked immediately. I'm like, this woman is a friend, like a soul friend from a long time. I just feel it. So welcome, Nicole Burgess. Welcome with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Carrie. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Me too. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Nicole. So she's a licensed psychotherapist. Yes, Carrie Hummingbird has friends who are psychotherapists. Actually, there's so many friends who are psychotherapists. It's crazy. She's also a leadership coach. She's works with introverted, sensitive, purpose-driven professional women. And she's the founder of and host of the Soulfilled Sisterhood podcast, and the founder of the Self-Care Summit, Improve Your Bottom Line in Your Personal Life. Over the last 15 years, she has coached, guided, and collaborated with over 1,000 women. She helps them break free from perfectionism, demote their inner critic, embrace their fears through action, and grow professionally without sacrificing their personal life. As a result, they are more productive at work, have more meaningful relationships, and no longer sacrifice their well-being for others. So you can find out more about Nicole, and this will be in the show notes as well, at her website, NicoleBurgessCoaching.com. That's Nicole, Nicole, Burgess coaching.com. So we'll put that in the show notes for you guys. But first, let me just ask you, Nicole, as I told you, I would love to hear, your own personal today version of your journey into your purpose, because I know the stories evolve, right, as we learn about ourselves and we learn
Totally.
what story we want to tell. So tell us what story you want to tell today about your journey into your purpose work.
Yeah, so my journey, I like to say it's been a long, winding, twisty road because I started out as an accountant. Then I went in to be a business analyst, and I finally called or listened to what my soul was calling me to do, which was actually go into the therapy world, which now I'm turning more into the coaching world. But it took me years to actually follow that calling. And I've had some really good friends and colleagues of mine help me along the way, like, dude, you're not old enough to say no to this. And so I finally went down that path, went to grad school, moved away from where I grew up, didn't know anybody when I moved out to California, took the plunge, faced many, many fears. And this is, I know, a huge topic of today as well, just because of where we are during this recording of all the fears going on with the virus. But facing a lot of the unknowns. And I'm so grateful that I did, because I just love the work that I'm doing, and the opportunity to even be able to pivot to really hone in on working with women and love their temperament at versus trying to fight their temperament and listen to all the shoulds that our world loves to shout at us, our families may like to tell us, and because they're so worried about us, but not living under those constraints anymore and just doing what it is that they're meant to do. So yeah, kind of the long about way of saying it is just keep following what your soul is calling you to do so you can end up just feeling more alive.
Yeah, feeling more alive and really using your liberties for good purpose. I know that right now we're recording this in the middle of April, April 13th to be exact, and we're experiencing a loss of a lot of our liberties
Mm-hmm.
that we just took for granted and thought we'll always have these liberties. And I know I, for one, never ever thought, oh, I'll be locked up in my house for over a month. That never occurred to me. So, we're in this spot where there's a lot of fear being pumped into the collective through
Mhm.
some sources. And like fear is a big deal in my life. I've had to counter not only fear, but gaslighting. So,
Mhm.
like in my own experience of my growing up, and it's taken me a really long time to realize it, that I had my reality challenged many, many times. Like I would spot something and be like, that's not correct. And then I would point it out and then I would get redirected and totally gaslit.
Mhm.
So that's something that a lot of people are going through on a collective level right now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true. I think depending on, sorry, knows it. We were kind of talking about some of the things from social media to the big companies. It's really being mindful and using your critical thinking skills of what to really tune into and what not to. I still think we can make a big difference if we come together, and it's being, again, I don't know how else to say it, but use your critical thinking skills. Ask a lot of questions. Go deeper than what the one source is that you look at to make sure you're really getting all the facts. Because we know our brain is wired to look for, especially if fear's running it, that it's going to look for any evidence it can to kind of reinforce it. And oftentimes it's incorrect information or it's just old belief systems that are not true. The other thing is really tap back into your body. Your body is a huge barometer for what's truth and what is not. It's like I have a friend of mine, she talks about it when you clench or if you get really tight in your body, pay attention to that because that may be the warning system of something's not in alignment with either a subconscious thought that hasn't emerged to the conscious level or something else is going on. So get curious with it and allow yourself just to go a little deeper into your body of like, what is it trying to tell me right now in this moment?
What's so interesting about you, Nicole, is that you have like both hemispheres working.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
you have like the numbers and facts side, the crunching side, and you
Mm-hmm.
have like the soft skills side, like the psychotherapy and all of that. So you're able to balance like both sides of your brain when you're analyzing situations.
I attempt to. Some moments I do better than others. I can get off into this little side over here because being an introvert and a highly sensitive, I also have a extremely rich inner world. And so I literally can stay in my own headspace for days on end. But it's like, all right, I also need to get grounded and like be part of this, earth as well. And like what is going on. And so it's just being more aware, mindful of what's coming up and where are things at. And I think for many people, the practice, you really can have more of a balanced brain. But I think there's a practice to it as well. So I just know when I was growing up, the analytical side was really revered. It was really promoted, the logical stuff. But as I got older, because that part, the right side was really driving me more than anything. It's like, but you can't ignore it because that's where my low energy would come from. It's just like, oh, I'm not talking and doing the things that really light me up. And so it's being able to have both.
So is that why you eventually made the shift into psychotherapy? Was it because you were feeling that drain on yourself?
Well, so that was a big piece of it. I mean, that was a warning sign from the get-go when I was an undergrad and I went into accounting. That was the safe avenue, and I had a lot of family members saying you ought to do that versus the therapy because you can't make a living being a therapist. You can't do this, you can't do that. And again, I understand now that was their own fears and wanting me to stay safe. But I knew from a very early age, honestly, in high school, I knew I just loved learning about the brain. I love learning about people, what made them tick. And I knew from then I had a really wacky psychology teacher in high school. And he honestly was really what got me interested in psychology. And so it was not until I did an undergrad I minored in psychology, but it wasn't until my late 20s, early 30s that I went into grad school. But no matter where I went, I had people telling me their life story. I'd be in a grocery line, library line. I'd be sitting at different places that I worked. People would come in, sit down in my cubicle, just telling me all the stuff going on in the relationship. And I'm like, I'm trying to crunch numbers here. Okay. What?
You have the wrong office. You're looking for human resources.
Right. So I was like, let's go to school. Let's get some training. Let's get some skills to be able to help people. And I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, that's beautiful that you followed your heart. What was that journey like for you? Because I know a lot of people right now are in a position where maybe they took that safe path initially,
Mm-hmm.
and then And then the lockdown came and they realized that they were in a non-essential job.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I'm laughing just because, like, how many of us had faced that, oh, your job's not essential, and that, like, it kind of crumbles your sense of worth. It's like, oh, so you mean, like, because my job's not essential, I can't go provide for my family, I can't get out there and work, I'm helpless. So if you're already in that spot, and the reason I laugh is because part of me is like also delighted, because that's the point to be in, to make the shift into the thing you've known for a long time you should be doing, and you didn't do it because you had all these other fears. So, like, how did you navigate that space of, because you didn't have an epidemic to teach you that you weren't, you know,
Right.
doing an essential job. So how did you make that shift?
So for me, during the time that I was making that shift, I still had another job. I was still working as an accountant while doing grad school. So like I did 1 year, I take that back. I wasn't an accountant at that time. I was in a business analyst role. So I was still traveling, and I did the first part of my grad school online. So that helped. So I still had my income coming in while I was making this shift, and like, yeah, I think I picked the right school. Yeah, I think this is going to be okay, before I made the full plunge and moved across the country to go to grad school. And then I supplemented my income by having odd jobs here and there while going to grad school. So for me, I like to tell people I'm not one of these huge risk takers where I just throw everything at the wind and go like, dive into it. I like my little calculated steps for how to do that. So if someone's listening right now and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, my job isn't quote essential. What does that mean? First and foremost, it's not about your self-worth. I want those two things to be separated. You have skills no matter what job you did, whether it was deemed, worthy or not worthy, whatever that definition was at that time, right? It's knowing it's like, hey, whatever these skills are, how can I now kind of pivot or shift and look at what would those be good to or good towards? What is something that I've been craving to do all my life and not given myself permission to go after? And how can I use this time to start to enhance those skills, start to really network with people who may be in those industries, those areas that I'm really curious about? Can I shadow them? Can I do anything part-time, whatever, to help supplement my family's financial situation while going after this? Because this is our life. This is, to me, it's like this is the one and done show. So it's like if you've got an opportunity, and I know for a lot of people this can be very devastating with the way everything is worked out, and at the same time, it's like I can stay stuck in that devastation, or I can grieve my losses and keep taking small steps forward to get me closer to what really is in alignment with my values, is in alignment with what is calling me, is in alignment with that makes me feel much more expansive and know that I can give back in the way that I am meant to give back.
Yeah, I love that. I've just actually been coincidentally doing coaching with my 21-year-old, my almost 21, it'll be 21 in the fall, about, okay, well, what do you see now? Because he's kind of in that beginning phase. He hasn't really stumbled into anything long term yet. And so it's a good time to set a course. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was saying, listen, looking out there in the world, what do you now see are the professions that stay essential during a chaotic event?
Mm-hmm.
And is there anything inside of those businesses or inside of those things that you resonate with you as something that you enjoy, would be a good match, would be a good thing to go for, is like
Mm-hmm.
something that resonates for you and is essential, deemed by public authority. So, or things you can do from home, like me, like you and I, like we
Right.
work from home, we can see clients over Zoom, we don't
Yep.
need to we don't need to be in person. As long as we have internet, we're good. We can just connect with our clients. And so something like that. So it's good to set yourself up in that way, to start looking at those conditions so that you don't find yourself devastated again because of something totally out of your control, and you're aligned more with your purpose, which I think is really the way to be safe, or anyway, is to be aligned with your purpose or your divine purpose.
Well, and to piggyback on what you just said too, when you're talking with your 21-year-old, it's also remembering that you don't have to, if you start down this path and like, I'm stuck in this forever. No, no, no. Oh my gosh, I've pivoted so many times. I tell people this is like my fourth career. Maybe I'm on my fifth. I'm not sure. And statistics show this day and age, that's typical. I think people change their jobs either 6 to 7 times over their lifetime, like careers, right? And for me, I know this was more of a calling. So it took me a lot of steps of what I had to find out what I didn't like, what didn't resonate to me, in order for me to actually say, okay, finally, let's do this thing. Let's walk this path, take the quote scary steps, because you're going to step more into what you're meant to do so you can make it happen. So, for the 21-year-old, for whoever, it's, you may need to do this for the next year, 2 years, and you're going to gain so much information by doing these things that you're going to figure out, yes, that lights me up, or nope, I need to do another small pivot because this
Not
isn't for
that.
me. Yeah, which is fine.
So, and then like what you're talking about is that even like your accounting job, you did that, you got into it, but then you learned things there, I know for a fact, that are helping you doing your business now.
I love how you just said that too, because I know for a fact you'd be right. It totally has helped me in my business and my personal life.
Which a lot of us soft types, if we don't have that foundation of the economics, then a lot of the soft types, the healers and the helpers, they don't know how to like structure a business.
Right. And so what I often see with people that I work with is either, so whether it's women in corporate jobs or women in their own small business, typically in corporate jobs, they see they don't negotiate their salaries. And so the
Mm.
first thing is, and there's studies that go behind it, like women typically don't, men do. And it's like, we need to keep changing that, because we still know we under earn in the field, in whatever field that is, right? Corporate world. And then for small businesses, especially for healers, they're like, oh, but then I'm become selfish, right? An old belief system, an old paradigm. If I charge for what I do, then somehow I'm going to be, quote, bad. And it's like, no, 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 no. You've got to actually charge for your services because you're investing in your business. It's a business. It's not a hobby if you're doing this work. And you need to make it so that one, it pays the business bills, but it also pays your personal bills. And so you need to know your numbers, whether you do the crunching or you hire a bookkeeper or you hire an accountant. You don't have to do all of it, but you need to know your numbers so that you can price the things that you do to make you thrive and not just,
Eke by.
yes, thank you. I was like, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's like you've got to have something to make your business truly a sustainable business.
Yeah, a lot of and you got to be innovative. That's the other
Yes.
thing is I realized early on in this, because I have a background as an entrepreneur, my brain, and I'm an innovator by design, so I just innovate. I was like, wait a second, I'm trying to base my business on one-off healing sessions. That is not going to fly. I need like
Mm-hmm.
packages.
Mm-hmm.
So instead I started realizing, wait a second, even that isn't really good because I'm relying on individual clients who then either decide they're not committed or, sometimes changes
Mm-hmm.
happen and then they drop off and then my income is affected by that.
Yep.
And so then I realized I needed to diversify my offerings. I needed to have more group programs. So it's like more diversified. If one person drops off, I still got the rest of the group. So, it's like I've had to really change my business up so that my needs are met as I'm delivering this work. Because as you know, and I know, when you start down this path, this particular path, where you're helping other people, you have to keep doing your own personal work.
Yes. It doesn't stop. That
It
is the journey
doesn't
of an entrepreneur, man. It's like,
stop.
you want personal growth, be the entrepreneur.
So you have to have enough money for your own journeys, your own
Mm-hmm.
sacred work, your own mentors, your own, otherwise you're not a good mentor for anybody.
Right.
If you think you're done, then you're not a good mentor. I'm sorry. If you think you're done learning, please don't learn from that person, because the truth is we're all evolving, we're all learning, we're all growing, and we need to humbly admit that we're not done
Oh, yeah.
in order to
I,
be a really good coach.
well, and to me, I think any leader, I don't care how you define that leader, but to me, a leader is a lifelong learner as well. And as we continue to grow and stretch, oh my gosh, I continue to, I'm like, oh, that was a blind spot I didn't see. Well, why would I? I'm inside somebody gave me this analogy the other day and they'd heard it from somewhere else. I don't know where it actually originates, but they're like, it's as if you're inside the bottle and everyone else can read the label on the outside, but you
Yeah,
can't.
you can't
And I'm
see your
like,
own eyebrows.
right? Yeah, you're like,
Like
oh, okay, yeah.
try to see it. You can't. So,
No.
and your ego can slip in there and really project things all over people. It's a dangerous spot to be in. So you
Hmm.
got to be careful as a healer, as a mentor, coach, a psychotherapist. You have to constantly do your own
Yep.
work because your own history informs your practice.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think one thing that really helped me starting down this whole path was even in grad school, we were actually required to do our own therapy. That was part of the process. So we got to see what it was like to be, quote, on the couch versus just sitting in the chair with the people on the couch. We got to experience both sides. And of course, most states, you were supervised for many, many hours. For California, you had to have over 3,000 hours before you can even take a test. And then once you took the, stressful test that they had you there, it's like every state that I've moved to since I've taken multiple licensure tests, but there's a lot of growth, a lot of self-awareness, a lot of ongoing practice. And yes, having your own mentors, having your own therapist, they're continuously needed throughout our journey in life.
Yeah, and we help each other. We learn from each other, and I think that's the biggest.
Yes.
We learn from. I mean, I learn from my groups all the time. So they learn from me. I learn from them.
Yes,
There's
that's the
something,
beauty
some
of it.
situation arises, and I go, "Oh, there's my ego," and then I'll go do my personal work on it and come back
Yep.
because that's what we need to be doing. We need to be really mindful.
Right.
So your own journey to mindfulness, and your own journey to the calling to psychotherapy, is there anything else you want to share about that for your sensitive listeners? Because I know you.
Yeah, I think for me, part of it is really embracing the temperament. And again, for like introversion, extroversion, that's more of kind of like, these are kind of your temperaments as well. But what's your preference? Do you have a rich inner world, or is it more like you kind of talk out your ideas and stuff with others? And you can still do both as that. There's also for Myers-Briggs, there's more to that with the lettering. But I think for me, my own path, it's been so helpful to really start to understand more about myself. So when I learned about Dr. Elaine Aron's work about the highly sensitive people, I've done now the Enneagram test, I've done Myers-Briggs training. All of those things actually helped me, which then in order helps everybody else that I work with. Because the more I understand me, the more I accept who I am and what works for me, I can really begin to let go and continuously find like the, I like to come back to our culture here in the US. It's so driven all the time, and that just doesn't work for me. That depletes me. I have to have moment of pauses. I have to have chunks of time where it's uninterrupted. And I think I would encourage anybody, whether you're working for yourself or somebody else, really find out what does work for you, then ask for what you need. The worst case is you're not going to get it. They're going to say no. Best case scenario is like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for even saying that. Let's work on that. What could we do differently? But when you work with your temperament, it's not that being a sensitive person, there's a fault with that. It's like, embrace that, because that's a strength. You see things, you tune into things that 80% of the world does not. For HSPs, we're like 20% of the population. And so you're tuning into all kinds of energy levels, noises that most people are just over their head, just don't see it. And so it's like, okay, what do you need to rejuvenate you? And making sure you do that, because a depleted HSP is a grumpy HSP is, yeah,
I can vouch.
yeah, it's just not
My family
helpful.
can vouch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the more you can feel, it's also important to learn how to discern, like what's
Yes.
yours and what's someone else's. I work a lot with my clients on energetic boundaries and
Yes.
visualizations to discern like what's mine, what's somebody else's. And especially during lockdown, let's not forget the lessons of lockdown. I'm hoping that this is being released in August, that we're done with that.
Yeah.
This might be hopeful thinking, but
Yeah.
please, oh please, baby Jesus, please let us be done. So tell us, like, how do you coach people to develop those boundaries and those discernments? Because when you really feel a lot, sometimes it's confusing to know, like, is this mine or is this someone else's? Is this a projection? Like, what is this?
So the one thing I actually do with my clients, I will ask them if they're open to some feedback. So they may be talking about a specific topic, and let's say they're saying, I'm feeling really anxious and I don't know how to navigate this, or I don't know how to say this. And I'm saying, well, are you open to some feedback for what I'm experiencing right now in this moment with you? And if they say yes, it's like, well, right now my chest is really tight. Is yours? And oftentimes they'll be like, yes. So again, there's that picking up on where their body is and what's going on for them. So that can also be a way you can navigate that with whoever is in your home with you, for the clients that you're working with, of just being able to say, hey, are you open to some feedback? I'm just sensing something in my own body, and I'm wondering if this is also going on inside of you. So they can start to raise their own awareness if they're even open to that. But for you, then you get to check out, is it really mine or is it somebody else's? So if I'm experiencing that for them, it's like, oh, that's not mine, that's really theirs.
Yeah, I started learning that exact thing when I was in training for my energy medicine certification.
Hmm.
We actually took like meditative journeys on behalf of each other, and then I was nervous because I was like, I told Alberto, the founder of the school, I'm like, I don't know if I should tell her this because it looks like my life, and I think I'm projecting. And he's like, trust spirit, just tell her and see what happens.
Hmm.
And it turned out she was like, that's my life. And I looked at her, I'm like, you must be my double. Like, like, so like there's a way that we also self-select,
Yep.
people to work with. And so sometimes because we'll understand what they're going through, they're brought to us. So there's extra discernment there too. And in our
Yeah.
families, there's some overlap.
Well, and I think what you're hitting upon too, it's also like, okay, is so when you're checking it out with somebody else, there is the discernment, is that mine or is it theirs? It's also looking, it's like, oh, but I'm also very aware of this. So you may be truly like one or two steps ahead of that person you're working with, or even in your family member growth wise. It doesn't mean you're better than, it's just a different level of growth. And it's recognized like, oh, okay, I can feel that in my body and I know where that kind of comes from and what I can do to manage that. But if they're not aware of that, and again, if they're not open to changing, that's fine. That's not your job to do anything with that or change them. But it also can help them in like, oh, so now I understand when you're doing X, this is what I do, and here how it manifests in myself. So now I can do something different. Whoop, now they start to grow. And you start to change the whole kind of equilibrium within the house, within your relationships, because you're both open to having deeper conversations and not judge one another with where you are. This is just what I'm experiencing in this moment.
Yeah, I like that you point out that no one's better than anybody else. It's not about being better. It just means that you might have worked on a certain issue more, put more
Mhm.
focus into it than another person. And they might have focused on something else more that you haven't put any focus into.
Yep.
So we're all like individuals and unique and equal in the sense that we all have equal sovereignty and equal rights, and and we're all at different levels of different understandings. And so
Hmm.
we need to be mindful of that. And I know that as an extra sensitive person and a feeling person, and and when you do this work, you expand your capabilities. So,
Yes.
which is so cool because you can know all kinds of stuff, and it's none of your business unless you're invited.
Exactly.
That's a big deal. I work my son and I work a lot on that because he'll be like, no, I don't want your help. Stay out of it. And I have to be mindful of that, not to
Yep.
go peeking in to see, because I could, but
Hmm.
not to go peeking in and violate that to see what's going on. It's not my business. I have to be mindful of his boundaries.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. Yeah, coming back to that because it is. I often have folks where I'm like, stop over functioning. I like to say jumping the fence. You're on someone else's side of the road, right? It's like come
Like, I
back to
cleaned up
your
my whole
own.
yard. Now I'm going to hop over the fence and clean up yours.
Right. It's like, no, 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 no. They're on their path. That's their journey. It's their timing. It's not yours. And so if you're not respecting their boundaries, that's a boundary violation. And all of us know something at some point in time in our lives, our boundaries have been violated, mild to severe. I mean, there's a whole level of these things. But it is, if someone's saying no, it's like, I'm going to respect that. Even though I may have wisdom in this specific area and you haven't navigated that yet, if you're telling me no, I need to honor that you've got to navigate it in the way that works best for you, not in the way I think is going to work best for you.
Yeah, and I've had I used to take it really personally, and I have to say I'm not completely done taking it personally. When close family members have been like, I don't want to talk to you because you talk about skills, not pills, or I don't want anything to do with you because you're getting to be way too happy and joyful and it irritates me. Like,
Yes.
there is that. Like that is
Mm-hmm.
a thing. And it's because the more I feel like the more integrous you are with yourself in terms of following your higher guidance and being disciplined and making choices based on what's healthiest and best for you, that when you're around other people, your very presence and the choices that you make tend to highlight the things that they're doing in their lives that are not helpful for them,
Right.
and they don't often want to know that.
Right. It's a hard thing to see. I mean, I've had things reflected back. I'm like, ouch, ouch. I didn't really want to know that information in that moment. Yet when I gave myself permission to step back and like they weren't intentionally trying to do it to hurt me, it was to raise myself up in a better light. And when I looked at that, I was like, yeah, yep, there is truth in that. As much as that may have been
Mhm.
painful in the moment, I was able to do something about that and move forward and not get stuck in, oh, they're doing this to me versus they informed me, right? So there's, yes, not taking it personal is a big thing. You want to help, but only if they're asking for help. It's not helpful if you're telling them what to do and they're not asking for it.
Yeah, and even I sometimes still share things that I found helpful, and then there is a not response.
Yep.
It's like, okay, I crossed the line again. It's sort of like as a light worker, there is that question of, do I keep leaning in and offering things and just accept the silence? Or do I just do nothing and sit back in my little house and pray? So what are your observations about that?
Yeah, so for me, that's a beautiful question because I think I do this every day. There's moments where when I'm doing my podcast, I'm like, oh, I need to find some guests. I need to do this. There's a lot of work that goes into doing a podcast. And at the same time, I'm like, but I really love meeting the people that I love. Again, I got to meet you and
I
it's
know.
so fun. And the other thing I continuously remind myself, whether that person that is listening right now, whether they want to hear the information right now or they want to make a change right now, it's also planting a seed. They can hear it, they can turn it off, they can turn away. They don't need to ever come back to the podcast. Okay, that's fine. They don't need to. That's fine. It's where they are on their own path. For other people, they need to hear it from multiple places before it's like, okay, now I'm ready to actually take that action step. I feel inspired to take that action step. So I think it's the constant planting the seeds. And if there's silence, it's like, again, their path, that's where they are. I keep
That's
moving
where they are, and
forward.
they're not ready for that, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that as a healer, I've gotten so much good training on boundaries over the years, and I've certainly crossed many boundaries and then learned from that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But where I'm standing now with it is just is like more and more and more clean boundaries around how to interact with other people, especially my loved ones, and knowing what I know and then sharing it with them and inviting them to it. It's like sometimes I want to be a little bit more like a mama and be like, do this now. There's no options. you know?
And that's
And
when you go,
and then sometimes that works and sometimes it really backfires.
mm-hmm.
And so I think it is a delicate balance when you're working with somebody else in their sovereignty. You want to allow them the space to learn. You know, it's no fun to do a puzzle and somebody comes along and puts all the pieces together for you.
Right.
That's crappy. We're all here to put our own puzzles together.
Mm-hmm.
We came because we wanted that self-mastery at a soul level to put our own puzzle together.
Yep. And I think in part of our roles in the coaching arena is people are coming into this space of saying, I do want to learn. I want to grow deeper. I want to do things better, whatever. They're really trying to, I call it level up where they're at. And so it's I like to say I can be compassionate and I can be direct. So if you're going to come into my space and we're going to work together, and there's a whole process to do that, I'm going to hold you accountable. If you got old stories coming up, I'm going to say, oh, there it is again.
That little giggle and a wink.
Right. And so people are like, oh, there's that perfectionism. I'm like, you betcha. She was trying to run the show and she's just not so good at it anymore. Right. Or if I know that they're fear gremlins or they're loud inner critic, because those are the two biggest things that come up, like that's driving everything. And I'm like, well, that just left you constricted. Now what do you want to do about it? So we can have some fun with it, but also really recognize this is what continues to hold me back or play small or just not get me to where I want. And so it's like, don't take everything quite so serious. It's like, yeah, hold you accountable and move forward. We can do that
Yeah,
with a
hold
lot
you
of
accountable
compassion.
and move forward. And my life's journey has taught me that no mistake you make is so shameful that it can't be forgiven.
Exactly.
And if you guys read
Exactly.
my book Awakening to Me, you'll understand what I just said. Because yeah, my spirit said write everything and write it transparently and put it out there because people need to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to see where you came after all that you lifted. And that's what I think we're here to do also, is to inspire people
Yep.
by being honest and transparent. So a lot of times on these broadcasts, we share a lot of sensitive things because it's not to just, I don't know, be voyeurs or whatever. It's to like It's to really show that all this dark stuff that people tend to think about themselves
Yep.
behind closed doors and be so depressed and shamed about, and let it like collapse them into little puddles of I don't know, self-pity.
Hmm.
It's like, no, all of that is where the gold is. Like when
Hmm.
you can accept those things, that's where your gold is.
I like to say, step into the messy, right? Go into the
Go into the
pit.
goop.
Yeah, because there is. That's where the magic really is, and that's how you move forward. I mean, I know for me, I had to really learn, and grad school taught me quite a bit about the self-compassion and forgiveness, because I used to be extremely hard on myself when I would listen to everybody else's shoulds and where I ought to go in my life and I should be doing right now. I gave myself a really hard time because I wasn't doing it right. I wasn't following their rules, and I would step out of line a lot. And it didn't always go smoothly for me. So I had to learn a lot of self compassion for myself. And then also, I'm still learning that in certain ways because every time I think I grow, there's that inner critic that likes to come up for me and like, I don't think so, Nicole. And I'm like, yeah, watch me go. If you don't have anything kind to say, take a back seat because my inner coach is coming forward. Thank you very much.
Oh, I love that. Inner critic in the back seat, inner coach up front.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
Because we look at
awesome.
stuff and we may need to analyze it from different angles, like what's mine, what's theirs, what can I do differently? Is that working? Is it not? Go on.
And we're here to exactly do that. Like where I believe we're in Earth School and we're
Yep.
here to learn, and we get matched up with other people that have like a mesh, like a similar lesson, right? So that
Yep.
we're working with two sides of the same issue. And then somehow we can still love that person even though they're irritating the hell out of us. And we can figure out how to be with them and love them just the way they are without trying to change them, and love
Mhm.
ourselves just the way we are without trying to change ourselves. And then the ironic paradoxical thing that happens through that whole process of acceptance is change
Yep.
and evolution.
Yep.
So, it's so paradoxical and confusing and wonderful and mysterious, and isn't it?
It is. It's a
So
beautiful,
what's your
messy journey.
it's a beautiful messy journey. So I'm guessing that your starting recommendation for people who are feeling a bit disheveled from our experience in the fall and the summer up until now
Hmm.
is to get in the mess.
Yes. I don't know how I can I think I repeat myself so often, but people are like, oh, I haven't heard that before. I haven't heard it that way. So I'm going to say it so many times. It's just like, give yourself permission to step into that messy. Get quiet, get your journal out, get your music paper out, get your collage stuff out, whatever you need to do to express what's going on in the inside of you. Put it outside of you, because most often what I hear is people are up in their heads so much and they're like, oh, I'll remember it, or oh, I'll get it figured out. I'm like, no, you won't. Get a different perspective by putting it out on paper, whether it's a song, a poem, collage, whatever, and you can start to get a different perspective and then literally step back and look at like, oh my gosh, I knew this was in me, and yet I wasn't giving myself credit for whatever that strength was that I had, or that superpower that I have. I'm a great listener, I'm a great analytic, I'm this, I'm a that. It's like, yeah, look at that, and now step into, now what's my next action step?
Yeah, and really face the whole mess, right? Like look
Yes.
at the mess. Look at where you kind of fell off the wagon of love,
Yep.
for briefly for moments. And you got angry or you lashed out or you freaked out or whatever it was, and you feel it was so horrible. Okay, write it down. Okay, that's my lesson plan. I'm going to work on that. And then write down all the things you realized about yourself through the challenge. Like, did you hold space for your loved ones?
Hmm.
Did you stay grounded and logical during the chaos? Did you
Hmm.
manage to reposition and pivot your business? These are beautiful gifts. So give yourself credit and
Yeah.
applause for like, hey, you did a good job on this.
I imagine most of your listeners right now, somewhere along the line, their time management skills probably really improved. And I think that's something that so many people,
Yeah.
right? Again, the rushing of our world literally has slowed down, but the inner world, whether it's your home life, especially if you've got kids and you were trying to homeschool and do your business and pivot and everything else, there was a lot. So if you were able to navigate through the utter chaos at the beginning and you're coming out on the other side like, oh, we're all here still, then you did an incredible job of time management. Now apply those skills as you move forward.
Yeah,
So
and
all of that.
check in with your family and check in with your kids and get their feedback too, because they
Yep.
matter.
Mhm.
I can't help but throw this in, and it might open a can of worms, but I do that from time to time. Okay, in my frazzled mom state, back when my kids were small, and I was a stay-at-home worker, stay-at-home mom, and I
Mhm.
also like worked from home, entrepreneur. There were times that I didn't have the nanny there, or that there was a big project that had to get done and I didn't have support. And at the time, for whatever reason, and I had to manage the kids like I imagine many people are doing over this epidemic, I have been doing,
Mhm.
and pulling their hair out the way I did
Mhm.
back then. And, I used this strategy. I saw this video on Facebook circulating. This is where it comes from, is that she was just like so exasperated. And she was like, it's okay to be mediocre in the middle. It's okay to stick your kid in front of the TV for 7 hours. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
no. Because on the other side, after all of my training with deep childhood psychology and healing that takes place, the kids don't forget that actually. They remember and it hurts their heart. And I'm dealing with conversations with my sons now at 17 and 20 who's telling me, Mom, like you weren't there for me. You were working. Like I got the message that work was more important than me.
So have conversations, because you can't go backward in time, but you can do the healing now where you are. So the parents who are listening to me, I'm like, if you need to place your child in front of a TV for more often, let them know why you're doing it. And then literally carve out, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a half hour where it's just one-on-one time with your kid or family time. Make something where it's more very intentional of spending that time with them. And
And
you
if they come
everybody's
up to you and they come to you, like don't multitask in aha. Like turn around,
yes.
look,
Acknowledge. Yep.
acknowledge, presence, hug, like
Mm-hmm.
really hear what they're saying, validate.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so important. For me, I see people and my own kids, suffering from this feeling of neglect.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I thought I was doing a great job because I thought it was one up. I was a latchkey kid.
Mm-hmm.
My parents weren't home till 7 o'clock at night. So I thought, oh, great, I'll work from home. And
Right.
that way I'll always be there for my kids.
Right.
And then I didn't see this one coming. I was like, man, they got the idea in their head that work was more important because I was working.
Yeah. And I think again that goes back to also the self-forgiveness, right? You were doing what you could. It's like I had to put also food on the table and shelter over their head. So it's like this is what worked in those moments. And I think that's where communication cannot be, you can't have enough communication. That's what I want to say, with one another in a family. And I like to tell the families that I work with on the clinical side of it, continue to have family meetings now more than ever, especially during this whole pandemic. Have family, everything is
With no
shifted.
no technology, like no
Correct. No.
distractions, like just
Mm-mm.
like playing a card game or just
Yep.
around the dinner table, checking in,
Yep.
conversation. How is everyone feeling? Can you access
Yep.
your feelings? Because the heart tends to shut down, I notice, when there's a lot of stress.
Yes. Yeah, and so you want to elevate your emotions, and to elevate, it's being in the state of love, gratitude, compassion, joy, bliss. When we're in the place of fear, resentment, anger, it's the lower level emotions. They're not, emotions aren't good or bad, I don't stick that label on them, but energy wise, you've got the lower level ones and you got upper level. And when you want to stay in heart coherence, because we know our heart is connected to the brain, and there's a ton of hormones that actually get released as well between those two organs. And it's often like, oh no, the brain does more than the heart. No, the heart actually does more for the brain. And if we're really constricted, everything, it impacts our immune system, impacts our adrenal glands, all the dopamine, serotonin, everything. And so we want to stay in that elevated state. So having conversation about what is working and what is not, and not judging one another. It's like, I'm just having a meltdown moment. Okay, let's have a meltdown moment. Yeah, totally fine.
Well, and I want to say, like, because a regular theme through our whole conversation has been about the throat chakra and
Mm-hmm.
speaking up and
Yep.
speaking out. It's like we need to hear what our kids are doing and thinking and feeling because
Yep.
they're our number one resource. They're our
Mm-hmm.
number one most important thing. And so we need to hear from them what's going on. And we need to then, if they're not doing well, we need to adjust in the other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't believe in making kids adjust to the work.
Right.
I did that because I had this idea that I had to do the work, or I had to get it done, or I would get fired, or this and that. And
Mm-hmm.
after I go back and review that now from this vantage point, I would advocate for people, no, you set boundaries on work.
Yeah. And if you are literally concerned about whether you're going to get fired or not, talk to the person that you're working for, or talk, if you're self-employed, having conversations with your clients, making sure you are holding boundaries with work hours, how long your sessions are. All of that matters, because if you don't, then it's leaking over into impacting your personal life. And it's like, no, 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 no. I like to say, it's not, there's no perfect balance, but it's about finding the harmony that works in your life. And that goes between your work and your personal life.
Yes, exactly. And it's not 100% bad thing. Both of my boys are super independent. They know how to take care of themselves. They can cook
Mm-hmm.
themselves dinner and lunch. They, so like they know how to do their laundry, like they do all it. So it's, they're very independent. But
Those are
but
life skills.
but
Yeah.
those are life skills. But now you got to work on the heart. Open
Mm-hmm.
up the heart. Know that you're being heard, you're
Mm-hmm.
seen, you're validated, you're loved, you're adored, you're the most precious thing, and believe it, because the other stories, okay, let's just vanish those now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's multiple layers of this parenting thing I'm learning.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what you're talking about too is coming from the secured attachment style too, where
Yeah,
you are seen and heard and held. And if you didn't have it growing up, it's hard to role model that unless you've done some of your own inner work, like we've talked about,
it's
and
been
then
a
you still
journey.
navigate. Yeah, well, and you still navigate that even if you had that. And it's just like, okay, what's working or not? But all of it, yeah, like we're saying, is conversations, 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 conversations.
And everything can change. There's a new sunrise in every single moment. So even if
Yes.
you had all kinds of childhood trauma, I'm here to tell you, you can heal.
Yes, absolutely. I'm
You can
a
heal.
firm believer in that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, this has been a delightful interview, of course. So many good gold nuggets in here. Thank you, Nicole. So, how can people, do you have a free gift or some way that people get started with you? Is it your podcast? Is there anything else you want to share?
Yeah, if they go out to, I just totally blanked on my little link for my 10 signs you might be a perfectionist, but if they go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com, they will see my little newsletter. I think there's a little pop-up that comes on and they can sign up for that. Or if they want to go out and listen to Soulfilled Sisterhood, that is on my website as well. So
I'll
this
pop
has
the
been
link
so
in
fun.
for the 10 signs that you might be a perfectionist. I'll pop the link in there to the show notes as soon as I get that from Nicole. And I'll also put
Beautiful.
a link to my interview on Nicole's podcast, and you can check out that. And okay, so you guys, I ask you every single time, did you enjoy this? Did this help you? Did you get at least one good takeaway? One thing? If you did, please share this out. Share it out on your social media. Share it out with friends, family, just as an offering. You know, definitely not to anybody who's totally already told you they're resistant and they don't want to hear about this stuff, but to anybody who's open, like share it out and give it a 5-star review and leave a comment, because that's how we spread the message, because that's how the engines that be determine what content gets elevated and what gets, just goes into la la land. And we want people to see this. We want people to get helped, right, Nicole?
Right, exactly.
Awesome. So here's your public service hummingbird announcement and Burgess. And we're going to give you kisses now. You want to help me give kisses? Because I give kisses. And
Absolutely.
these are completely sanitary, germ-free, energetic kisses coming your way. Here they come. Love you guys. See you next time on Soul Nectar. Bye for now.